It's simple and it's free. Just visit afr.net/apps and click Alexa. We're not joking. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Find out what day it is. Hold on here. Fred Jackson. What day is it, Fred?
25 of September.
25th of December.
September.
What did I say?
December.
Yeah, it's not Christmas, is it?
Yeah, we wouldn't be here.
Well, I need to rewind this and start all over again, I guess. I've done lost 2 months of my life there.
That's right. I haven't seen you since the summer.
Well, good morning, Chris Woodward.
Good morning.
So, Chris, Fred, and Tim here. Ed's out today, and Ray's not with us, so we three blind mice will be carrying this show for the next hour and a half. Yeah, we were out last week. By we, I mean my wife and I, Allison, and my sons, and Stephen and Beth McDowell, my friends from the Providence Foundation. We did our tour of our fall tour of Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and then we did Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon. So we were gone a week. Just wonderful folks, 108, something like that, folks from around the country. Most all of them support our ministry, and it was wonderful to spend time with them and talk to folks who believe in what we're doing, and we just had a great time on our tours. And again, we do that every year, so we're already taking registrations for 2024. So we go in June and September. So if you want to check that out, just go to spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. The dates, the price, the itinerary, everything is there at that website. Yeah, but we had a great time.
Now, when you went to Washington, D.C., did you have proper attire? Or is it wide open there now?
Oh, I know what you're getting at. The senator from Pennsylvania who dresses
Fetterman.
Like a couch potato.
Yeah.
Dresses.
I don't know if Chris is going to go into. A reporter from the New York Post went to some nice restaurants in D.C., right?
We do have this audio, yes.
In D.C. And he had a hoodie on and shorts.
Like Fetterman.
Fetterman, all right?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let him in.
Yeah.
So you're saying that they'll let you on the Senate floor,
Yes.
United States Senate floor, dressed like a weekend warrior, but you can't go to a nice restaurant dressed like that in D.C. to prove a point. Correct. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and to prove that we're not making it up, I do have the audio here. We're going to point out that we do have a bit of an audio quality issue. You can understand it, but there is a lot of background noise because he's basically recording a conversation with a restaurant employee with his phone. But what you're going to hear now is John Levine with the New York Post trying to get into a swanky New York City restaurant wearing a hoodie and sweat shorts, much like John Fetterman wears to his job at the Senate. Clip 7.
Is there a dress code here? So there's no possible way I can eat inside at all. Are we open right now?
We are open.
Right, do you have space for two?
We don't permit shorts.
Shorts, I see. You have a dress code?
Yes.
Would my sweatshirt be okay?
No.
No, you don't permit that either. So nothing I'm wearing is okay?
Yeah, it's athletic wear and shorts.
Have you ever allowed anyone with athletic wear and shorts in? There's a United States senator that dresses like this.
Yes, he would not be permitted.
And he would not be permitted either, she said.
All right, fellas, I got to tell you, there's a part of me that I like to dress like John Fetterman. You know why? Because it's very comfortable.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
However, you got to understand decorum, and to have a United States senator wear a hoodie, and I'm not big on hoodies, but I do like to dress comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And to wear a hoodie and shorts and tennis shoes on the floor of the United States Senate to conduct business should not be allowed.
No.
because it's a professional place of business, and even fellow Democrat senators are complaining
Yes.
that he is allowed to do this. I don't know if that will be reversed or what, but
But here's the other thing, Tim. If you or I went to visit,
yes.
we could not get in dressed like Senator Fetterman. If we wanted to sit in the
No.
gallery, we
No.
couldn't get in.
Oh, yeah. No. It's, I don't know what they're going to do about that, but it looks terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see what Rand Paul did in response to this?
What did he do?
Okay,
The
I'll
senator
share.
from Kentucky.
Yes, I'll share the link here in a second. But he, in an effort to point out how silly this easing of the dress code is, Rand Paul decided to go to the Senate and on the Capitol steps, or on the steps, I should say, wearing a red bathrobe.
Okay, I think that's a meme, Chris. I think that's phony. It's a Photoshop, because they had several different senators dressed up in crazy, casual wear just to make a point. So I think you've been duped there, Chris.
I'm going to double check you.
You double check me right there.
If I'm right, can I wear a hoodie and sweatshorts?
Sure.
Okay.
You know what? The around here at AFA and AFR, after the pandemic. Remember the pandemic?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that COVID?
Breaking news.
You're going to break news here, Chris?
Tim Wildman is correct.
I like to hear that. That sounds good.
Yeah, it was an AI fake, so it got me.
Yeah. I want to check.
I'll see myself out, America.
Okay. They're doing AI fakes to
Yeah.
make fun of. Anyway,
Sorry.
I told people around here, the people started dressing down
Mm-hmm.
after COVID, and I said, somebody asked me about our staff here, and I said, it appears to me that anything short of pajamas is accepted. and I'm a casual dresser, but my word, we were walking around in robes and stuff. No, I'm just kidding here. But anyway, I'm all for casual, but no, you're a United States Senator. You sign up for, as I say, a professional entity, body that you're a part of, and you to let people just walk around in shorts and tennis shoes and hoodies to conduct business of the country is inappropriate.
Yep.
All right, next story, Chris.
Well, from dress code situations to corruption charges, this was huge news on Friday, and understandably so, because you have a senator facing charges
I'm sorry,
of
did you
corruption.
say corruption in Washington, D.C. together?
Yeah, I sure did.
Okay.
I'm going to try to make up for being duped here in a moment.
Okay.
But in a story which you can read on our website, afn.net, Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey is charged with corruption. He has battled corruption accusations for a number of years now, and those have been either thrown out of court, ruled a mistrial, that kind of stuff. But on Friday, the new set of charges alleged Menendez took repeated actions to benefit Egypt despite U.S. government concerns over Egypt's human rights record, including ghostwriting a letter to fellow senators encouraging them to lift a hold on $300 million in aid to Egypt, as well as transmitting non-public information to Egyptian officials about military issues. Some of the news reports that came out on Friday, Tim, involved things like him being in possession of gold bars, having nice cars, having a lot of mad money to go out and spend however he likes. So Senator Bob Menendez, it's not looking good
from
for
New
him.
Jersey?
Yes. And he's holding a press conference this hour to announce who knows what, but more on that to come this hour, perhaps.
Well, apparently he's going to announce he's going to run again. He says he's innocent. Now, how many people do you think in America have 13 gold bars, like Fort Knox gold bars, underneath your bed? Plus, he had cash stuffed in envelopes all over his house. He had cash.
Was he raided by the FBI or something?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been kind of out of the loop on
Yes.
this
Money stuffed in jackets in the closet.
one. Uh-huh.
Cash we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Now, it's not only him, his wife also, because
Right.
his wife is in on this as well.
Now, he is a United States Senator
Up
from
in-
New Jersey who's
Yes.
a Democrat.
Yes.
You got to give this to him. He does put on a suit and tie
Yeah.
when he goes to work. So you got
If
to.
gonna-
That's a.
He's a
Point-
well-dressed criminal.
He's a well dressed. But so he's being indicted
Yes.
for bribery,
bribery.
basically.
Yes.
Okay.
He did favors, apparently, for interest in
So is he
Egypt.
going to step down today, Chris, or not?
I doubt it. He didn't step down the last time. Now, what's interesting here is there have been a lot of calls over Twitter or X for him to step aside. I think even some Democrats have urged him.
Oh, they
or
are.
recommended
Some of
that
them.
he-
He's damaged goods. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so we'll see what happens here. He's not really a high-profile United States senator.
Well, he's chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee.
Okay.
Uh,
I just don't see. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not in the
No.
news a lot.
no,
But
he's too busy.
with his hand out.
Yes.
So you tell me the FBI went into his home
Mhm.
and found like real gold bars underneath the bed?
13 of them worth $150,000.
Okay. Now that's almost akin to, the coffee can buried in the backyard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of mentality we're talking about.
Well,
here.
and the news coverage, well, the FBI provided, or the Justice Department provided pictures of a jacket worn by Senator Menendez with cash they found stuffed in the pockets around the house. I mean, this is bizarre stuff.
Yeah.
I have shared a link to what we're discussing here with Senator Menendez on our Facebook page for people to read.
Okay. Well, so he's going to have a press conference to try to do cleanup on
Yeah.
aisle 5. Okay.
According to the AP, he and his wife, who's also accused, they've not been married very long. They got married in 2020. They began dating in 2018, and they got engaged in 2019 after meeting at an IHOP in Union City, New Jersey, which is described as a frequent haunt of his.
Hey, listen, a lot of people have met at IHOPs.
You want to talk international business?
That's how many U.S. senator going to IHOP to meet a lady. Okay, I think next we'll find out what he says today about the gold bars and the cash Fred says stuffed in pockets. Go ahead.
Let's mention this because I've got some audio here. Governor Newsom.
The California governor.
Yes, California Governor Newsom.
I call it Real Cream.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Real Cream Gavin.
He had a lot of people talking on social media on Friday, fueling speculation that he may decide to run for a higher office. And I say that because late on a Friday night, Gavin Newsom, the California governor, vetoed controversial legislation known as AB 957, which would have required judges to remove custody of children from parents who do not affirm a child's gender or identity or gender expression. So a lot of people who don't normally applaud Gavin Newsom were all of a sudden, way to go, Gavin, that kind of thing. It's a great decision. But as Fred can point out here, he did something very positive that many people would like, and then he went down and became his usual Gavin Newsom self on Saturday.
Let me tell you the backdrop here that most people have heard having to do with the governor of California, Gavin Newsom.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, of course, California is the biggest state in the union, so they get a lot of attention.
It's basically a country.
Whatever they do. I think California, at least one time, and this may not be true anymore, like had the 10th largest economy in the world.
It's still up there.
By itself. So anyway, however, a lot of people think he is going to replace Joe Biden as the presidential nominee on the Democrat side. Okay, so that's why more attention is being paid to him because Biden clearly has serious problems in a myriad of ways, politically and personally and health-wise. So a lot of people are looking at Newsom as maybe the, quote, savior for the Democrat Party. So what he did right here, he did one good thing, and then he did a couple of terrible things in terms of legislation.
Mm-hmm.
He's the governor. He vetoed a bill that was basically saying you could take away children from their homes if the parents didn't affirm their, quote, gender identity. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Of course, I think that would have been struck down as unconstitutional. But nonetheless, he did that was so far whacked left that even Gavin Newsom said it's not I'm not gonna do this.
Right.
Now, what did he do? But he signed 2 subsequent bills that
On
were
Saturday morning.
Go ahead.
Right.
All right. One of those, and this is the way the AP reads this story, one of those sets timelines for required cultural competency training for public school teachers and staff. All right? While another creates an advisory task force to determine the alleged needs of LGBTQ students. So what I read from that, and I haven't read the complete legislation there in California, what I read from that basically is that teachers are going to have to be required to take propaganda teaching,
Right.
pro-LGBTQ. It's not only teachers, but school staff. The second one will require families to show that they can and are willing to comply with the decisions of a foster child in foster care, regardless as it pertains to their sexual orientation or gender identity. In other words, if you have a foster child, you, the parent of that foster child, are going to have to be willing to accept if that child says, it's a boy, I feel like a girl today, or they come out as a homosexual, you will not be able to debate that or try to counsel them not to do that.
That's the law he signed.
That's what he signed, yes.
I tell you what, California is just. I don't see how much longer people who are freedom loving or even are Christians are going to be able to stay there. Well, millions have moved out in the last few years.
But I think if you're a Christian teacher, for example,
Yeah.
according to this law, you're going to have to undergo propaganda training,
You talking about
pro-LGBT.
public schools or private too?
Public schools.
Public schools, okay.
Yeah. But also, if you happen to be a foster parent,
Right.
you cannot debate now whether your child comes home and says, it's a male, I want to be, I'm identifying as a female. You as that foster parent could lose that child if you debate that or try to get counseling.
It's hard
against
enough to get foster parenting now.
Right. There is a
without those
case
kinds of pressures.
in Massachusetts. Beckett, the Beckett law firm, is involved in this one, but Beckett is representing a couple of people in the Boston area that are Catholic and they want to foster. They can't have children themselves. And they claim that they were denied the ability to foster kids because they don't. They believe in traditional marriage, man, woman, gender, that kind of stuff. Biblical beliefs that we all hold near and dear. And they're going to court to fight Massachusetts over that. So that could very well play into what California is looking to do here.
You think Newsom will be the guy on the Democrat side, Fred, when this is all said and done?
The way things are going, there's a poll, and maybe we'll get to it later. There's a Washington Post ABC poll that's out there from the weekend that says former President Trump, if the election was held today, would beat Biden by 10 points.
Now, that's a national poll.
That's a national poll, but it is following a trend right now.
Yeah.
We've talked about these polls over the last month and a half, 2 months or so, but more and more Democrats are having strong reservations about having Biden on the top of the ticket.
They don't want him.
No. That's the bottom line. So who are they going to get? That's your question?
And they don't want Harris, VP.
Oh, no.
They don't want her. She wouldn't be any better.
No.
So in terms of I think there's some big discussions going on, maybe behind the scenes in the Democrat Party, about who could be the you got RFK Jr. there.
Mm-hmm.
He's running against Biden. Of course, he's polling way down, way behind.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an opponent, right, to Biden right now, but it's not competitive. But I think the Democrat Party, the big money and the big leaders and the big wigs, they understand that Biden is the weakest candidate
Yes.
they could have, and they've got to have somebody else. And it seemed to me the logical choices would be Gavin Newsom from California, the governor. I say logical choice. He's so far left. I don't know if he's electable. But now Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, she's a lefty too.
Far left.
Shutdown governor,
Mm-hmm.
but she was reelected.
Mm-hmm.
in Michigan.
As was he, because he got a recall.
That was he. So Michigan's not Michigan's more split than California is in terms of conservative liberal, but I don't even call them liberals anymore. They're just far left wackos.
Yeah.
So, but Whitmer seems to me, or Newsom, would be a likely candidate to replace Biden should he drop out.
I find it very interesting. The Democrats have chosen Newsom to be at the Republican debate at the Reagan Library.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be there doing counter interviews outside, giving the Democrat point of view outside the debate there at the Reagan Library on Wednesday.
Well, that's kind of telling, don't you think?
Yeah.
Who's chosen him? Did Biden? The White House?
I would assume the DNC, Democratic National Committee, chose him. Yeah.
They want to get him out there for the very reasons we're talking about, in case he's the nominee, right?
The Hill is reporting that it's the Biden campaign sending Newsom.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. We got about 3 or 4 minutes before the break. Don't you think that Jill Biden, the First Lady, will tell her husband he can't run again?
Well, you're asking me from a compassionate point of view.
Yeah.
I would say, given the mental state, I'm Jill Biden, the mental state that I'm seeing in my husband.
You're Jill Biden.
If I'm Jill Biden looking at what's happening to my
Right.
husband, there were several incidents last week. One of them, he told the same story twice within a few minutes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, he also told the he was speaking to the Black Caucus.
no. He
No,
was
there's
speaking to
the
the
other way.
Hispanic caucus.
Okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
He was speaking to the Hispanic Caucus, and he referred to them as the Black Caucus, right?
He did, yes.
So he got confused there. It's daily. It's
Yes.
daily, and it's out in the open. I'm just saying, seems to me any wife of somebody in this condition would say to her husband, "Hey, honey, you can't. We're not up. You're not up to this. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
I know."
Mm-hmm.
And we need to announce we're stepping down after one term, and we can go to our beach house in Delaware or
Which
whatever.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
Which one? There's two people I think on planet Earth that could tell him, "Hey, we need to call it a day and go home." One is Hunter, and one is the First Lady. I
Why
don't
Hunter?
know that Hunter is going to talk him into it, because if you believe what Republicans say, he needs Dad in office to continue making money for the family. And Jill Biden seemingly enjoys being First Lady.
Yeah, most first ladies do.
Yes.
But I mean, you gotta at some point. It's elder abuse, I guess you could say, or it seemed to me a wife of somebody in his condition would tell him straight up, you can't run again. Now, also people in his condition, I use that in quotations, whatever it is, I don't know if it's medically diagnosed would it be medically diagnosed as dementia, but it's surely looking like that. Somebody in that state, they're ornery
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, and they're belligerent. And you tell them, honey, you're not, our sir, we think it's best that you step down and for your sake and for the sake of the party.
Yes.
And he said, no, I'm not. I'm doing good. People love me. I'm doing a great job. Bidenomics.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you, if he is in that state of mind, there's no mechanism, doesn't seem to me, short of a what is it that they refer to, the 25th Amendment, or what is it? Is it the 14th? Excuse me, my mind's
25th, I think. Yeah.
You know, the one where you go in and say he's mentally incapable
Yeah,
of holding the
25th.
office.
Yeah.
Is that 25th? Isn't that 25th Amendment?
Yes.
Okay, short of that,
Mhm.
which I don't think the Democrats are going to do, then I don't know anybody can do anything to force him to withdraw his name as a Democrat leader. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Over in Workingham, England, there's a fellow by the name of John Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin was busy, it seems, doing nothing. He was so busy doing nothing that he got himself into trouble with the law. He was so busy doing nothing that he did not have time to pick up the mail that was piling up at his front door. Among the letters that Baldwin did not open were demands for tax payments. Baldwin was taken to court, freed on bail pending a tax probe, and allowed to return to his normal pursuits. When asked what he had accomplished in the 30 years he had devoted to restful research, Baldwin replied, "Nothing. That's what I set out to accomplish." Well, there are a lot of folks in this old world who, although they don't go quite to the extreme that Mr. Baldwin does, seem to agree with him on this idea of doing nothing. Or if they do anything, it's for themselves only. And in a real sense, one could say that what Mr. Baldwin does, he does for himself only. It's a real shame that Mr. Baldwin and countless others who do nothing for anyone else and very little for themselves could not come under the influence of the master workman of the world. Their lives would all be a little different if he was allowed to motivate them instead of them attempting to motivate themselves. There is one thing that everyone can be thankful for, and that is that the Creator has not quit his job. Consider what the result would be if he should decide that he'd like to become busy doing nothing. You're talking about a mess? There would be a dilly. But he hasn't decided to quit, and he never will. The Galilean spoke to some who listened one day in the town of his trial, and he said, "My Father is working still, and I'm working." If we are hunting for something to be thankful for, there it is. It's a pity that Mr. Baldwin could not come under the influence of the great carpenter. The carpenter would give him some meaningful work to do and would make him happy doing something constructive in this world instead of doing nothing. Some people interested in the subject of doing the work of the Creator asked the carpenter one day, "What must we do to be doing the works of God?" And he answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. Witness the work of those who have believed in him all over the world." Just before the terrible death, this man of all men spoke, "I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work which you gave me to do." The one who gave him work to do gives each of us a job also. And to be sure, it's not a job of doing nothing. It would be a wonderful world if we could say the same thing he said before our death also. If you have something to do, get busy. If not, find something.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. 2 Corinthians 5:1.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Hey, Charles and Sharon McCord stopped in to see us from, they live in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They've been down on vacation in Florida and going home, and came through Tupelo and stopped to see us and gave them some popcorn, some of our holy popcorn here, which makes life a lot better.
Sanctified popcorn.
Sanctified popcorn.
Ooh.
Got the famous popcorn machine that I utilize daily here. Is with a lot of nice. We got cheddar. We got all kind of whatever you call them. All right. So anyway, we want to thank them for stopping by. And if you want to visit us here in Tupelo, Mississippi, you're traveling and you have an opportunity to stop by. All you need to do is let us know you're coming a day or so in advance. That'd be wonderful, and we can schedule you a tour. You can come into our studios. You can have some of our popcorn.
Yes.
All right. So we invite you to stop by and see us. We always love meeting our listeners. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, and Chris. Hey, we're joined in the studio one of my good friends, Dr. Dean Register, who's in town from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Brother Dean serves what church? You said Cross Point, right?
Cross Point Community Church, Hattiesburg.
Hattiesburg. How long you been there?
Going on 17 years.
Now, is that you got a new book out? We're going to talk about in just a minute. Is that a Southern Baptist church, or what is that?
It is Southern Baptist affiliated. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so how many deacons meetings have you been in your career?
You know, when we planted the church, we said we're going to let deacons be New Testament deacons.
Okay.
They're not a board that runs the church. They're a body that serves the church.
Okay.
And that's
so you're structured just a little differently than a lot of Baptist churches.
Yes, very much differently.
So you have elders or what?
In a similar way, we have what we call a ministry advisory board.
And, I mean, who harasses the pastor? That's what I'm getting at here.
Everybody still has. I mean, it's open season with pastors all the time.
But you've been serving there for how many years?
17 years almost. Yeah.
Wow. And now, you when did you start? Were you always been a pastor, or were you a layman before?
I was born in Florida, grew up in Georgia.
Okay.
I call Mississippi home.
Okay.
We have lived in Mississippi since 1985. I
Okay.
pastored 8 years at First Baptist Gulfport, 14 years at Temple in Hattiesburg, and then nearly 17 now.
Well,
here at Cross Point.
Amen. Well, now you've got a new book out.
Yes.
How many books have you written?
Well, I wrote a little commentary for Romans some years ago, and then as pastors, I don't know how pastors have time to write anyway, and I'm a plodder, so I write slowly, but I'd been asked so many times to get something out there for pastors and believers, and I guess I got old and I decided I'd do it, and so I wrote Holy Grit.
But you wrote Romans.
It's a commentary on Romans, just a little
I always
commentary.
thought Paul did that, but I didn't realize that you were that old. You wrote a commentary.
I did.
But now, Holy Grit, you were talking to our staff this morning in devotion. The name of we're talking to Pastor Dean Register from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And Holy Grit, that's the title of your new book, The Will to Preserve. You were talking to our staff this morning in devotion. That's not a theological out there. That's everyday living.
It's everyday living. Yes, exactly. And what I did is I defined Holy Grit as working out the salvation that God works in us, because it's not some kind of meritorious. Like I'm gonna persuade God to save me, or trying to earn that. It's that once we're saved, we're obligated to live it out because He's worthy. He's worthy of us living in a way for Him. And as you guys know, we live in a quitting culture. If it gets hard, let's just quit. And so I said, well, what characters in the Bible really started to personify persevering, Holy Grit? And I looked at several of those, and that's what.
Who's number one?
Ooh.
Or maybe you didn't categorize them like that.
I
Give us top three.
Yeah, I started chronologically.
Okay.
Began with Abraham. Abraham, that guy had to wait a long time. Mm-hmm. If the Lord told me, hey, you're going to have a child, and I had to wait that long, I would have given up. Abraham waited and waited.
What was he waiting on?
He was waiting on Isaac. And the interesting thing, glad you asked that, because there's a passage in Genesis in which Abraham says, Ishmael comes along, and then he says, why don't we just let Ishmael be the promised one? And I've discovered that if we're not careful, we will settle for the Ishmaels of our own making rather than wait for the Isaac of God's promise. Mm-hmm. And so Abraham, I started with Abraham, walked him through a lot of struggles. And the thing about Abraham is he had to wait. And waiting, I'm not good at waiting. Some people are great at it. I'm just not. I bounce my leg, I twiddle. It never really developed.
You got pastor's ADD.
Amen. It never really developed my DNA, I don't think. But boy, waiting will gnaw at your faith. It will just bleed you almost. And so I love the fact that Abraham, to his credit, he did wait and wait and wait. And then I looked at Joseph. When you think about Joseph in the book of Genesis, this guy had to forgive a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get brothers that really want you to die, and then they sell him, and he finally finds a job. Potiphar hires him. You can take care of my estate. And then Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. And then when he flees from her, she said, well, he did it. And he gets thrown in prison again. So this guy has to find a way to forgive. And we all do at some point. We may not have been abused, but we've all been hurt. We have to find a way to forgive. And so what I did is I walked through that. And Tim, what I learned in my research is a lot of people say, well, forgiving is forgetting. If you remember, you didn't forgive. That's not true. If we were to ask some people who had been badly harmed, had a loved one that was murdered, or the Amish children that were killed some years ago, their parents can never forget that. But what they did is they showed the world that they could forgive. And I've said, forgiving is not so much about forgetting as it is remembering to let God's grace replace the hurt so that we're void of retaliation.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you look through the scriptures, and you cited Abraham, you cited Joseph, right? As I call them characters. They're real. They were real people who had to endure or persevere or have, as you say, holy grit. That only shows us all through the scripture the people that were even closest to God were not immune, or what word am I looking for? Or they couldn't escape real life.
No, they couldn't. They were not exempt from it.
Right.
And when I get into Caleb, I love Caleb. If I was probably dealing with great heroes, I would have included him in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. Because he seemed to be a much more noble character than Samson was. But I know the list is not exhaustive, it's more illustrative. But Caleb, he does everything right. And he tells the people, hey, we can do this. God's in it. I know we can do this. And they rebel, and guess what happens? Caleb has to suffer with the rest of them for 40 years. Mm-hmm. No, as you said, nobody's exempt. We don't get a free pass. And so I raised the question, how do you sustain a resilient faith? I mean, if I'd been Caleb, I'd said, you knuckleheads, y'all disobeyed the Lord, and I have to suffer with you. But boy, and then when he finally gets, into the promised land, he says to Joshua, I want that hill country. That's where the giants are. And I want to tackle the giants. And I wrote that, we're all going to get old. Some are denied the privilege, but I want to be like a Caleb. There's the hill country. God, let me tackle some big things. Let me do some hard stuff. And I may have to gum my food. I may have to use my walker. I may have to wear Depends. But I want to go full bore for Jesus until he calls me home. And so Caleb was a great example.
I'd rather avoid the Depends, though. if at all possible. I don't know if I needed that spiritual image there. But talking to Pastor Dean Register, the book he's got out is excellent. I haven't finished it, but I know it's called Holy Grit: The Will to Preserve, and this is every day down in the trenches Christian living right here. And Dean has a lifetime of experience in his own life and dealing with folks in his churches that he's had to help through life's questions. And how can people get a copy of the book?
They can either contact the publisher, which is Westbow, division of Thomas Nelson Zondervan. But as you guys know, it's easier through Amazon.
Sure,
they're quicker and they're faster.
Yeah,
so they can just
all the online book folks have it.
Yes,
just Holy Grit.
The Will to Persevere.
And Dean Register, Register. Now, you got your Bible open there in front of us. So what are you looking at?
Well, I was just thinking about Elijah in the Old Testament, how he had to persevere. And Elijah's a titan of the faith. I mean, he just strides across the Old Testament like a giant. And he challenges Ahab, and he says, we're going to have a showdown on Mount Carmel. And when the showdown occurs, of course, the Baal prophets are routed, and then Jezebel says, I want his head. And what does he do? He runs. And I don't like to see my heroes run, but I'm so glad that Elijah, the whole description of him is there, because I've run sometimes. I've said, Lord, I can't face that. I'm going to run away.
Put that
There we
microphone
go.
up there closer
Thank you
to
so much.
Yeah, you're fading in and out.
Yeah, and I've said I'm going to run, and I have, but God calls us to stay. Anyway, with Elijah, what does he do? He runs all the way down to Mount Horeb, and he says, Lord, I'm done. I'm finished. And what I did in Elijah, I tackled the subject of depression. For a lot of Christians on the backside of COVID, they battled depression. A lot of them just gave up. They quit on their job. They quit on their marriage. They quit on their dreams. They quit on their church. They quit on the Lord. And I know quitting can be right for the right reason, but it's always wrong to quit on God. But here's Elijah, and
Amen.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm in this cave, and God, you just need to get somebody else. But God calls him, and God says, you don't need to resign. You just need to re-sign. And
Amen.
so he sends him back out.
Is his mic cutting in and out? Adam, could you get over here and fix that? Because anyway, there we go. There we go. All right, I got to ask you.
Yes.
You've been a pastor for how long?
Ooh, let me see. When was the Mayflower? Four and a half decades, I guess.
How many weddings have you done?
Oh, man, I did 500 at least. And
Well, tell us about number 247.
that was the one I forgot.
All right, you got to tell me, because I love asking pastors these questions at funeral or weddings or whatever. What's a funny memory of a wedding that you have? Or
I've had them pass out.
What now?
Yeah. I've had bridesmaids pass out, had a little groomsman pass out. The one I wrote about, it was a failure. I forgot, kind of, sort of. There was a couple that I dearly loved. I knew them, young couple. They're a great couple to this day. Wanted me to do their wedding. I said, great. We lined it up. The wedding coordinator said, I know what you're going to tell them. You're going to encourage them to live large for Jesus, and this is what you're going to say.
Right.
And I said, okay, great. And she said, you don't need to be here for the rehearsal. I said, I love that. Rehearsals are boring. I love that. So I went home. My wife and I had a great evening that Friday night. Next day, the wedding was at 2:00. She says, I need some azaleas and Lord Pedlums planted.
Who's saying? Your wife's
My
saying
wife's
this?
saying
Okay.
that. Yeah, and I go out in the yard, and I dig the holes, plant all that. We have lunch. I said, I need to mow the grass. So I'm back out in the yard, and at 10 till 2, she comes in.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
She says, have you forgotten a wedding? I said, I just remembered.
It's 10 till 2, and the wedding starts at 2?
2, exactly. And I'm, with green lights, I'm at least 20 minutes from church. So
Right.
So I told the wedding coordinator, tell her to play the pianist, and to tell the pianist to play everything she knows. She has to go over
Is this
the Bach.
before or after cell phones?
Yeah. This is before cell phones. That's right.
Oh, so they did. Somebody
No.
would. Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you didn't even.
No. So I jumped in the shower. I was dirty and filthy. Jumped in the shower. Had my socks, my boxer briefs, and my T-shirt. And Sharon said, "I'll drive. You dress in the car." So we go down the highway, and we stop at a traffic light, and this old guy in a truck looks over at me like with disgust. Not what you think, buddy. And so,
did you make it?
I was
Two wheels?
I was late. 2 wheels sliding in. I ran past an usher, and I saw the groom, and thankfully he wasn't holding a gun or anything. And he embraced me. He said, "Oh, well, Pastor Dean, we thought you'd been in a wreck. We're so glad to see you."
Okay.
I'm not sure the bride's mother was glad to see me, though.
Well, Ed, Ed's bivocation was a bivocation. Ed Battagliano.
Yes.
He's not here today, but he was a bivocational pastor for many years. And I think he told me one time he drew a blank on the name.
Ooh.
Standing up there, he had known these folks,
Ooh.
but he drew and that happens to all of us pretty much.
It does.
But that was he said that was
I
terrifying.
baptized a guy in the wrong name, but I guess that's okay.
Did you really?
Yeah.
In front of the whole church?
Oh, yeah. He
Oh,
was
my
about,
goodness.
A little guy was about 12, and his granddad was
Yeah.
a pastor.
Yeah.
And I knew his granddad.
But you-
Baptized, his name was Bob, and baptized him in the name of Ed. So
Did it take?
I think it took. I really do.
Oh my goodness gracious! They got the one moment on video of their grandson getting baptized, and the pastor calls him the wrong name. Oh, anyway, you got. Well, I want to thank you for coming by and being with us. And again, the book is Holy Grit: The Will to Preserve by Dean Register, our guest. He's in town with us. We're happy to have him, and you can get a copy of the book anywhere online, folks. Holy Grit: The Will to Preserve, and it has stories about all those biblical characters
Yes.
you mentioned and others.
Yes.
As you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dean.
Loved being with you. I fully believe that the American Family Radio is the premier voice for biblical Christianity in our nation. You guys keep going. I love all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
And may the Lord bless your church there and your writing efforts. You're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, and Chris. Chris, what is your next story?
I always hate, having to go back to news when we have fun, lighthearted discussions, because then I got to become Captain Doom and Gloom again and ruin the rest of the show with 9 minutes to spare. But nonetheless, one of the things that we have long talked about in this program is the fact that government thinks it knows better than parents and people in communities when it comes to institutions like schools, which, by the way, parents and community members are paying for through their tax dollars. And I bring all this up because Education Secretary Miguel Cardona is in the news today, and understandably so for what I'm about to play. Mr. Cardona doesn't like that parents and community members are fighting things like pro-transgender policies in schools. Secretary Cardona told an interviewer that people act like they know what's best for kids, and Cardona says it didn't always used to be this way. I'm going to play some audio here. Adam, we're looking at clip 12.
There was civility. We could disagree. We could have healthy conversations around what's best for kids. I respect differences of opinion. I don't have too much respect for people that are misbehaving in public and then acting as if they know what's right for kids.
Now, if you guys, listeners, didn't understand what he just said there, the head of the Education Department, a taxpayer-funded institution, said that there are parents and community members acting as if they know what's right for kids. Fred, you've heard a lot of incredulous things in your time in broadcasting. This has to be in the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. And this appears to be a growing agenda amongst Democrats. We talked about California a few moments ago. But I keep going back to this statement from President Biden just a few weeks ago when he said, these are our children. And don't miss that, folks. What he was really talking about there is that these children need to belong to the state.
Right.
That's what's going on here. You know, it brings up another story, and maybe we're going to deal with it in a few minutes. But anyway, it brings up this my memory of the German family that was homeschooling in Germany, and the state came along and said, we want your children because we, the state, want to raise your children with state secular values.
Right.
In other words, we think teaching them Christian values is not good for the state of Germany. Now, of course, this family had to escape Germany and came to America. But, Chris, there's a development on this German family we're talking about that has lived here in the United States, I think, for 15 years now.
Yes, we have this story on our website, afn.net. I'll share the link here in a second. And our headline from a Parish Alford article is German family that fled to the U.S. ordered to return. So that lays out all the information that you just shared there. But, Fred, go ahead and tell everybody what the update is.
Well, the update is this, folks. They have fought in the court to stay in this country. This is a beautiful family. They have fought to stay in this country because they know if they go back to Germany, they will lose their children. The Obama administration fought this. All right? This has been going on now for 15 years. They have just gotten notice that the Biden administration is not going to allow them to stay in this country. Now, they are, I believe, continuing to fight this. But the Biden administration that is allowing millions of people to cross our southern border and to stay. We had the story last week where the Biden administration is willing to give over 450,000 people from Venezuela who entered our country illegally work permits to stay.
Right.
But this family that is facing persecution, the loss of their children if they go back to Germany, this Biden administration wants to kick them out.
Yeah, and let's go back middle of last week when Attorney General Merrick Garland got up there and was hammered by Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee about persecution of people of faith. Garland got upset with one of them. How dare you, with all that my family came here and experienced and how we got here in our story, you can't accuse me of this and that. Here they are literally doing the same exact thing that he took great exception to. Getting questions about. It's a really troubling story. Homeschool Legal Defense Association has been very outspoken on the issue of the German family. I believe also Alliance Defending Freedom International has been involved somehow, some way, perhaps even just writing briefs here. So there are people that we know and work with that are active and trying to help this family here. And, you know, I mention this oftentimes in the show. There might be a group of people in another state, or maybe it's a different place of worship. Like you might be a Presbyterian, but there's a Catholic couple in the news for something. You need to be concerned about this because what's happening to those people will eventually come to your neighborhood. It's not a matter of if anymore, it's when.
Hey, I want to change the story because I wanted to hit this before we have to take a break.
Okay.
The mayor of Dallas, Texas. The mayor of Dallas, Texas.
Changing parties.
Yeah. He's been a Democrat. And now he's changing to a Republican, right?
He did, yeah. He said last week in an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Today I am changing my party affiliation. Next spring I will be voting in the Republican primary." I'll share that link here in just a minute.
Yeah, and he's an African-American fella, which, you know, almost all African-American mayors are Democrats. And he was, but now he's decided to switch parties. Does he say why exactly, Fred?
Yeah, he says this is hardly a red wave. But it is clear that the nation and its cities have reached a time of choosing, and the overwhelming majority of Americans who call our cities home deserve to have real choices, not progressive echo chambers at City Hall. He's talking about the crime waves that are being experienced in these cities, and he says enough is enough. We have to start representing the people. We have to start protecting our people from these progressive policies. And what he's talking about, these no bail releases. Speaking of that, I got to mention, there's a story out of New York this morning. You know, there's over 100,000 illegals have arrived up there. 2 of them were charged on the weekend with assault in one of these hotels where they've been putting them up. They get arrested, and guess what? They're back out on the street within minutes. It's just, it's
listen.
crazy.
The people in these cities like San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia, and, of course, New York City, the people are voting their own destruction.
Yes.
They are voting, they continue to vote for liberal Democrats. The liberal Democrats, like these DAs, the district attorneys, who don't believe in punishment for crime, they're turning these criminals out like a turnstile, violent criminals, back onto the streets. And so they're just doing it. They're just repeating crime over and over again. In Minneapolis, I read last week, these criminals, these violent criminals now are following people home into the suburbs.
Yes.
And they're attacking them in their driveways in the middle of the day.
Yes.
That was a story out of Minneapolis, and that's going on. San Francisco is just a horrible place now. Businesses are leaving all over the place. So, but until these people stop voting for their own demise, it's hard to have sympathy for them, quite frankly. Right. We'll be back momentarily.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez in hot water after being indicted on corruption charges. Chad Pergram explains.
Calls intensified for Menendez to step down from fellow Democrats. That included Senator John Fetterman and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They don't believe Menendez can do the job with this cloud over his head. The senator is ignoring those calls. He failed to attend an event in Union City, New Jersey for Hispanic Heritage Month. GOP members say it's significant that so many Democrats are turning against the senator. Democratic New Jersey Representative Andy Kim said he'd run in the Democratic primary for the seat next year. The GOP thinks the scandal puts the seat in play, especially after Menendez faced indictment 8 years ago but was cleared in a mistrial.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill face a government shutdown if they don't pass legislation to keep the government running before 11:59 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. For many Republicans, border security lies at the forefront of the race to avoid the shutdown, which comes as a surge of migrants and asylum seekers arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border in hopes of being allowed to stay in the country. Texas Republican Congressman August Pfluger says he won't support government funding unless it includes money for border security.
When we go back to Washington, D.C., this is my first priority. There's no funding without actually securing the border.
Republican presidential candidates will have another opportunity to pitch themselves to voters in the second GOP primary debate this week. Madison Allworth is at the venue in Simi Valley, California, where Fox Business is hosting the debate.
We are here at the Reagan Library ahead of the second GOP primary debate. On Wednesday, 7 candidates will be taking the stage. Their goal, convince America that they should be the next president of the United States. The most recent person to qualify is North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. He qualified for his podium position just this weekend.
The issue of men and women's sports continues to be debated. An event tomorrow in Mississippi will feature some well-known activists. Here's Robert Thornton to explain.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves will meet tomorrow in Tupelo with Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon. Both are swimmers and have been speaking out about men and women's sports. Talking about the event on AFR's Today's Issues program, Reeves said it's important for the people of his state to hear their stories.
I wanted to come to Mississippi at a minimum to say what you are doing matters and that we care for you and we pray for you and we love what she is doing and we support her because a lot of times when you have folks like that are constantly under attack, they need to hear that positive reinforcement.
Reeves said he will not shy away from the fight.
Because it's too important to my 3 daughters and all Mississippians' daughters that we make it clear that in Mississippi, we're going to let boys play boys sports and we're going to let girls play girls sports.
I'm Robert Thornton.
President Biden's education chief says he is open to using whatever levers are available to discourage colleges from giving admissions preference to the children of alumni and donors.
The threat, which includes withholding federal money, comes after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling against affirmative action. Nicholas Giordano, a professor of political science and a fellow at Campus Reform, says this is more weaponization of government to strong-arm institutions into doing what the Biden administration wants.
If colleges want to move away from legacy admissions on their own, that's fine. What makes this so different is you have the government of the United States overtly threatening schools and forcing them to make a policy, all because they lost the Supreme Court case when it comes to race-based admissions.
Giordano adds the Department of Education is not going to do anything to liberal schools with children of liberal donors, rather more conservative schools that have more conservative students.
It's not going to be used to target the Harvards and the Yales and the Stanfords. It's going to be used to target Liberty University, Ole Miss, and schools like that. And that's my concern. We see this weaponization of government in all aspects of life, and it's being used as a threat for funding.
I'm Chris Woodward.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR on this Monday. What did you say it was, Fred?
25th of September. It is now officially fall.
Oh, when did that happen?
On the weekend.
Okay. That has to do with the
equinox.
The equinox. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steve Paisley Jordahl, donning the Paisley shirt today.
I am. Yes, I'm. Well, I wanted to welcome you back in an appropriate manner. Thank you for saving our country. I know you fixed everything in Washington while you were there.
Well, I gave it my best effort.
Yeah.
You know, I was time limited, but
of course.
I gave it my best shot. So anyway, what happened while I was gone last week? Anything?
Oh, Ed misbehaved.
Ed.
I mean, a book could be written.
Ed was out last week, too, for a while, wasn't he?
He was. But we try to behave ourselves.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So who did the show on Thursday?
I did.
Okay, you and,
yes.
y'all three.
Yes.
All right, Chris. Steve. What's your first story for us?
Well, let's talk about this. When you were in Washington, of all the counseling you did you might have wanted to go talk to Robert Menendez, the senator.
I'd like to have a couple of those gold bars he's got under his bed. Huh?
Well, yeah. So, as I think you guys might have said, Robert Menendez, I think he's senator for New Jersey, right?
New Jersey. Their state.
He has been indicted and charged with bribery, a whole bunch of stuff. So basically, he was caught with gold bars in his possession and a whole bunch of cash sewn into the lining of his jacket.
That's weird.
I always make sure that my cash is sewn into the pockets.
Hunter Biden didn't do that.
No.
He just puts it in the bank.
That's right. Or buys a lot of drugs.
if it gets
or
that
guns.
Or guns.
Yeah, or prostitutes. Anyway.
So he had a press conference.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Shouldn't have said that.
But
it's true.
It is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Menendez had a press conference here while you guys were doing the first hour of the show.
Was it riveting?
It was. Well, yeah. He had some. He said, first of all, he is going to be exonerated.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, quote, I've accomplished, I work for despite the naysayers and everything who has underestimated me. I recognize this will be the biggest fight yet, but as I have stand throughout the whole process, I firmly believe that when all the facts are presented, not only will I be exonerated, but I will still be New Jersey's senior senator. And this is the excuse he gave for the cash being sewn into his pocket, into the lining of his coat. For 30 years, I've withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash from my personal savings account for emergencies, and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba.
Is he Cuban heritage?
I think he's of Cuban heritage. I don't know if he himself was in Cuba, maybe. But
excuse me, I don't want to spend too long on this point. The Federal Bureau of Investigation agents raided his home last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of a United States senator.
Yes.
Which is I'm surprised, but anyway, because
he was born in Jersey, by the way, or New York City. Sorry.
Okay. And so they must have been working on this obviously for a while to get an indictment. By that I mean the FBI. I guess the FBI now will say, see, we're not partisan after all. We go after Democrats and Republicans based on the evidence. That's what the FBI would say. Because a lot of conservatives have seen what the FBI has done or hasn't done over the last 3 or 4 years that have been almost all one-sided, right?
Yes. Well, he has back in 2017, I think it was, he barely got away with similar charges, was a hung jury. So I think they've been watching him.
Yeah.
And also not only is the senator indicted, but also his wife. So there is a belief in the Justice Department they've been up to no good. And by the way, they raid the house. They find the gold bars underneath the bed or wherever it was, the cash in the clothes, cash in envelopes hid around the house. I'm sorry. People just don't do that unless they're trying to hide something, like they don't want an official record of the cash that's coming into the family.
But I'm trying to understand how you sew up cash in your jacket. When are you gonna have to undo that to get the cash out to spend it? Yeah. That's strange to me.
They found $480,000 worth of cash in his home. So I don't know what kind of emergencies he has, but he probably could have gone a long time without getting to the cash that was sewn into his jacket.
Yeah. Well, so he'll have his day in court now.
He will, and he's innocent until proven guilty. Must say that.
Wonder if his numbers will go up. His polling numbers. 'Cause
I
that's
don't
what
know,
happens.
Trump.
That's what happens when you're indicted.
That's right. We'll have to find out. Interesting to find that out. That's a good point. Excellent point.
Next story.
All right. I think we need some new schools in Baltimore. Baltimore has...
Maryland you're talking about. I guess there's no other Baltimore.
There might be another Baltimore, but Baltimore, Maryland. 40% of their high schools, 13 of them, failed to produce a single student who was proficient in math.
Repeat that again now.
13
This is Baltimore, Maryland, a big city.
Big city.
Their school districts, and what now? What's
13 of their high schools failed to produce a single student who was proficient in math. And in fact, 3/4 of them scored the lowest possible score on the test.
Okay, now, how many public high schools are there? 13?
No, 13 is 40%, so do the math. It's, somewhere...
Okay, so 13 of their high schools, 40% of the high schools, public high schools in Baltimore, Maryland, failed to produce one student.
Not a single student.
That passed math.
That's correct. That was proficient in math.
That's right. And they spent, this is the other thing, they have a budget of $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion. The head of the school district where these schools are makes $400,000 a year. He has 10, what we would call in the military, 2 ICs. They each make $200,000 a year.
Yeah, but what are they spending per student, I wonder, comparatively speaking?
Well, the U.S. average is absolutely huge to most of the rest of the world. The bottom line in this is, and I read this somewhere, the problem is not money. The problem is accountability. But we've seen similar examples to this, but this is the worst example that I have seen. Not one student in 13 high schools.
Yeah. Okay, so... the liberal Democrat policies of the last 40 years have now basically destroyed the inner city black family.
Yeah.
By destroy, I mean there's no fathers, mothers, married family units in the inner city of most big city America. And so these policies have left the inner city black family in shambles.
Mm-hmm.
Is that...
That's fair.
Okay. So what happens? So what happens as a result is that these kids don't have structure in their homes, pretty much, and they have it's a repetitive cycle where you have 16-year-old girls having babies, then they live in poverty, right, and get dependent on the government for welfare. And then the kids, a lot of them don't have discipline and structure in the home, so they're getting involved in gangs and other kinds of activities. So it's no wonder that they're not able to be doing their schoolwork. To be able to now some will obviously, but broadly and generally, what's happened in these inner cities, these kids don't have a chance, basically, and so they don't do well in school. They don't pass. And what are they doing? Passing them along?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is the other problem within the school system. Yeah, the crisis in the family. But in the school system, they have these equity programs.
Yeah, every one of these students, by the way, the good news in this story is every single one of these students knew how to use pronouns correctly.
Yes.
So,
But they shove them along. These are high school students. And they're not, they all failed. So that tells me when they were in junior high and further down, they did terrible, but they just shoved them along and shoved them along and shoved them along.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids are coming out. They probably will probably graduate.
Yeah.
They will graduate even though they're testing this poorly.
So
anyway, one of the main points here is it doesn't matter how much money you spend per student in a school system if the kids have no discipline or structure at home and encouragement from the parents to do their studies and to do their homework and to show up at school and be disciplined. No amount of money in the world is going to make that happen. Yeah. Is that right?
That's sad.
By the way, these kids are constantly being told they're victims and they can't succeed because they're living in a racist country. You know, this is an interesting thing. You guys talked about the mayor of Dallas switching parties from Democrat to Republican. It's the largest city that now has a Republican governor. A lot of times people lay the woes of inner city and crime and education at the foot of Democrat policies. Now, I don't know if this is fair or not because his policies might not change a whole lot with when he changes parties. But it will be interesting to see if a Republican-led Dallas fares better than a Democrat-led Dallas. I'm just curious about that.
He spoke out in favor of law and order.
Yeah.
Yes. And also punishing crime.
Yes.
Right? That's been one of the big things. These
fiscal responsibility too.
These district attorneys in a lot of these big liberal cities, as I mentioned earlier, Fred, it's just the criminals, even violent criminals, are not being punished.
Nope.
And so they just prey on the citizenry.
Yes.
But as I mentioned earlier, I know I'm being repetitive, but these people in these towns and cities are voting for precisely that oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're voting their own anarchy.
That's right.
And it seemingly doesn't make any sense. They don't. I don't know when that will stop. When they'll wake up. I think the mayor of Dallas switching from Democrat to Republican, even though he's a longtime Democrat, African American gentleman, but maybe he'll start something where these big cities say, you know what, these liberal Democrat policies are not working. In fact, they're destroying our communities. We've got to change.
Yep.
I'm not saying you necessarily have to change a party from Democrat to Republican, but you have to change your way of thinking.
That's right.
In approaching crime, right?
That's right.
And so,
well, he'll have an ally too. My understanding, the mayor of Fort Worth is also a Republican. So you've got quite a force there now.
Yeah. Next story.
All right. Have you guys heard what's going on at Auburn University?
I read about that.
Read about it, yeah.
Now, I married into an Alabama family, so this is, any mention of Auburn, but this is a good story. So Auburn, like they had at the what's the college in
Asbury?
Asbury, thank you. They're having a revival at Auburn. In fact, they had 200 kids baptized in a single night. They had this worship service of the Baptist Union, or the Unite Auburn. It's a unity of all the Christian groups on campus. They had this Bible study and this service, and revival started breaking out. In fact, it's interesting because a student that was at the Asbury revival was there. That's kind of a common denominator among revivals, especially on college campuses. When someone from one place goes to the next place, they bring the revival with them. Anyway, 200 students baptized a single night. It, however, did not set well with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Our friends who are anti-anything religious, they've sent a letter saying because one of the people that helped with the baptisms was the head football coach Hugh Freeze. And they say, well, that's now coercing students and leaving out students. They apparently learned nothing from the Supreme Court decision with Joe Kennedy.
So Hugh Freeze, the head football coach, just gives up his religious freedom
That's what they
because
think.
he's a coach?
That's what they seem to think.
No, he was doing that on his own time and his own dime. He's a Christian, and he was you're saying he was participating in the baptisms of the students.
He was helping.
And the Freedom from Religion people
sent a letter.
Which there are 6 of them in Wisconsin at their office.
Right.
They send a letter trying to intimidate the school, I guess. Has Auburn University responded, or?
The student group has. They have a lawyer who's with the Alliance Defending Freedom. His name is Tyson Langhofer, and I don't know how they're responding. He's there to defend them.
I would tell him to go jump in a lake.
Well, 200 of them did and got baptized, so that might be a
set
good
that one
idea.
up for you. I put that one on the tee for you, Steve.
I know, right?
Yeah. So anyway, well, good. That's the Lord's moving there on college campuses.
He is.
And that's great news. Absolutely.
Last week when you were in D.C., we talked a little bit about what's going to be going on at the church in Atlanta. There's a conference by
Andy Stanley.
Andy Stanley's church in Atlanta is having a conference, pro-gay. He's gone off the rails. Anyway, the reason I'm mentioning this is because there is a form of liberal Christianity called progressive Christianity that has started to infiltrate even conservative churches, even evangelical churches in the United States. I want to introduce you to a guy named Calvin Robinson, who happens to be part of the Church of England in Britain. He's a deacon there, and he is with the liberal Church of England that had the gay bishops but he's done with this progressive Christianity. I want you to hear a little bit about what he has to say about this. Listen to cut 8.
Progressive Christianity is an oxymoron. You can either be a Christian or you can be progressive. The Christian faith is inherently conservative because it provides a set of values that are seen by the modern world as conservative. Ideas such as marriages between one man and one woman, that God made us male and female. Progressive Christianity is about twisting the truth again. It is all a lie. You can either have the truth or not the truth. The truth is objective, right? So you have truth or lie. And progressive Christianity, I see it much like trans. Like a trans man, the word trans in that sentence means fake, right? A trans woman is a fake woman. A trans man is a fake man. A progressive Christian is a fake Christian. It's the same thing. They put that little caveat before it to let you know that they're not really doing what the thing comes after it is.
That's a strong statement.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's he's got to be a black sheep in the Anglican church because they're pretty woke over there, and such that they are what's left of them. You know, your quote progressive churches, they're dying on the vine. I mean, if a denomination leaves the Bible, biblical truth and teaching, and subscribes to the modern day relativism or progressivism, whatever you want to, progressivism is really secularism in politics. But progressivism, they're not going to be around much longer. Listen, I can name you some historic Christian denominations in America right now that are going to be gone in 10 years. Okay? The Episcopal Church in America is, there's hardly anybody left now. Why is that? Because they don't believe anything anymore.
Right.
Okay? So, now, there may be some good Christian people still in that church. I'm not saying that God doesn't deal with people individually. I'm just saying as a denomination, they're dying. Presbyterian Church USA, same thing. That they've split up. They split up about 20, 25 years ago. The Presbyterian people who were part of the PCUSA, which was the mother church, they left. And they formed several different other kinds of denominations like the PCA and Cumberland and others. The PCUSA, much like the Episcopal Church, they're not going to be in existence in 10 years. They're just not. United Methodist Church, which I grew up in, they just split.
Yes.
They're splitting the churches all over America and they're splitting up over the United Methodist Church decided to embrace LGBTQ as consistent with, they just said, we're going to embrace the whole LGBTQ a movement, and if you don't believe in that, you need to leave. And so the churches who said no, the Bible explicitly teaches sexual morality as Christian living, and homosexuality is not compatible. That's what the Church of Discipline, the Book of Discipline of the Methodist Church has always said. Right. Homosexual behavior is incompatible with Christian teaching. That's what, basically I got that right. Anyway, so that church is splitting, that denomination, over this issue. I could name some others.
Evangelical Lutheran.
Same thing.
Same thing. And there's a commonality between those four that you just mentioned. It didn't start in the pew. It started with the leadership.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the ones coming out of the liberal seminaries.
Yes.
That's where they get indoctrinated on the left.
Right.
And then they bring it down into the churches.
Yes.
So
listen, if you don't believe really in anything, absolutely, as a religion, and this is true of any religion, people are not going to come to your church and make and work and give money and time. Why would you go to a church that doesn't believe in anything when you can go fishing?
Yes.
Right.
Huh? Or you can go do whatever you want to do. There's no people will not commit to something that doesn't stand for anything. You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
And also I mentioned the LGBTQ agenda that's infiltrated a lot of these churches. Also the universalism.
Yes.
Idea. When they're that is that all roads lead to God. No, that isn't what the Bible teaches.
No.
The Bible teaches that Christianity is exclusive.
Yes.
And that you must have a personal born again relationship with Jesus Christ alone to have salvation, so that you can, when you die, you go to heaven. I mean, that's the gospel teaching, right, Fred?
Jesus
and
said,
it's exclusionary.
And Jesus himself said it. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
No man
cometh unto the Father but by me.
So if you teach that what you just quoted the Bible, then you water down the message, and anybody and everybody is right with God or goes to heaven.
You have hit on the key issue. Before the church went wayward on sexuality, before it went wayward on all this, it left the authority of Scripture.
Yes.
Every one of these denominations started by saying the Bible doesn't mean what it says.
If you believe in God's word and hold true to that, your church will flourish.
Yes.
If you deny the Scripture, then your church will die.
Yes.
That's just a
It's
basic
counterintuitive that we as a Christian church need to demand more of our people than less.
Yeah. All right, folks, thanks for joining us here on the program, Today's Issues. Thank you for listening, as always. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.